is they don't want to change. People don't want to change. They've been giving a lot of money to Mr. Wagner because they don't want that to happen. You know, if you work and do your job, you don't have to worry about your job. And that's what the problem is they don't care. Most of them don't even live in the circuit. Most of them lived in Greenville County. And they have no vested interest in that community. And that's where I see a difference, is that if you need to work where you live, it should be the exception, not the rule, that you're from a different county. Because it gives you a vested interest. You have to go out on the streets. You have to go to grocery stores. You have to go to the gas station, and you run into people. And people hold you responsible for your actions, for your decisions. And if you make a decision, you go back to Greenville, you don't care. You're under different management, different circuit, jurisdiction. And that's where I differ. And I think our people need to be in our circuit. They need to be in our communities. They need to be out into the communities. Because when you have to sit there and look someone in the eye and give them a decision why you made that decision and give them an answer for it, it makes it more personal. And that's a problem we have at the office, is that access. Citizens are angry. You go down to Townville, Fairplay, Double Springs area, the whole area, they'll tell you they're angry because they have no access to anybody in the office, and that's got to quit. Our office is for the community. We work with victims, law enforcement, and we work for the taxpayers. And right now, all three of those groups are not getting their bottom's dollar's worth. And that's why I'm running. I'm going to change things. So that's why I'm asking for people to vote. If people are happy with the way things are run right now, then don't vote for me. I'll just be honest with you. But if you want change, then give me consideration. I'm your man. Thank you.
Go ahead.
First of all, I hope you heard Mr. Campbell say that you should live in your county. I'm the only one here that lives in this county, so I'm going to depend on Mr. Campbell for his vote. Your question about the repeat offenders that haven't been convicted, that maybe a PR bond's the correct thing. This 4 and 5 arrests, it doesn't happen in a week or a month. These things are stretched out for a year or 2 years. Why aren't they in trial? If they get out and they're out on bond, take them to court and get the conviction. But yet the same people are doing it over and over again. There's no excuse for not getting people in court 2 or 3 years.
Why is that? Is that the clerk's function, or is that just the docket's so full? What?
You will see if you get one of these books. I got an example of a docket in here, and we usually have court over here about once a month. That's one person on the docket. That person fired his lawyer, so he sent the judge and the jury home. The prosecutor's office controls the docket. Another thing, I'll go out on a limb and say, I wouldn't care if they took the docket and turned it to the clerk's office. I'm big on, I say it all the time, it's not an absolute rule, but I say oldest first. Bring them to court, get it done. If the clerk's office would say, here, your next 10 people, do something with them and get them moved. But there's some gamesmanship involved, and we just don't get cases moved, or haven't in the past, but there's no good excuse for it.
Should we be looking to the various judges when they start? I assume judges run down here. I don't know that that's the case. Do they run for office down here?
No.
Okay.
Legislature.
Pardon?
Legislature.
Okay.
Back to your question on the management. Do we review every single case of the other attorneys that are under me? No, we don't. I'll be honest with you, really cannot do that. I've got 500 cases on my personal docket that I manage. Other attorneys in the other two that prosecute in general sessions have very similar caseloads, and there's no physical way that I could try to keep up and look at all their stuff too, and manage my 500 cases and run the office. So no, we don't. If there's a particular tough one, we staff it, we all look at it, and we may all give just input on what the proper outcome should be. Now, that was your question. I think we went off on a tangent here, but to address that tangent, employees don't come dragging in at 10 o'clock or 10:30 in the Oconee office. People are there on time when they're supposed to be. So that's not an issue in Oconee. I can't really tell you why they're accused of doing that in Anderson. All I know is that Mr. Campbell was hired by Chrissy Adams. He was promoted by Chrissy Adams. She's been out sick with cancer for quite some time. He was hired by her. She promoted him to deputy solicitor over those people. To me, if you didn't make any changes in how things were done, then the issue lies with management. Now, Mr. Campbell also quit his job 3 weeks ago to run for this office. I chose not to quit. And I chose not to quit because I had 2 major trials coming up that we had committed to back in December while Miss Adams was still going to be running for solicitor. One was a major arson and an attempted murder case where a guy poured gasoline on his wife, set her on fire, and she spent many months in the burn center down in Augusta. That was the case Mr. Burr referred to as being on the docket. The judge continued that on Thursday before court. It was one of 2 cases we had on the docket. It was so involved, there were so many doctors, nurses, experts, SLED that were up there. It was all we could do basically to get that case ready for court. So what did we do? We had a backup plan like we do every term of court up here. We had a lot of people carted in with pending charges where we can do the pleas. So yeah, the judge sent the jury home. The judge didn't go home. The judge stayed there and we worked and we did pleas for 4 days that week. So the court was not a waste. That's not true what he told you. And again, in Oconee, people come in on time. People respect what I tell them because if they don't, then they're going to get written up. I don't know of anybody that's been written up down there. And I can't tell you why just because they live in Greenville, sometimes to get the best prosecutors, you might have to go outside the circuit to Greenville. I don't really consider Greenville much going outside the circuit. A lot of people live in Powdersville and Anderson County and work in Greenville and vice versa. So I think that's kind of a misconception that these people are all running back to Greenville. And that's a whole other tangent from what you asked, but I felt like I needed to address that because I don't think what was said was accurate.
Bubbles, since my name is used.
These are presidential
I
debates
will
now.
prove to you, when that case fell apart, the judge left by the middle of the day. She did not come back that afternoon. She was not there the next day. She came in for a few hours and did guilty pleas. And if any of you want to call me, I will get the proof to show you that. Clerk's office keeps a list of the entire time the judge is on the bench. All these things are provable. I don't need to make anything up. As to the docket having somebody else, that's the docket that's in here. I ask you to get one of these books and look at the stuff I'm telling you. I'll bring the facts with me.
Okay, yes. Andy, way over here, maybe just pass it down.
No, I think everybody can hear me. You mentioned before about 3 strikes and out. I'm new to this whole area, or to the state, I should say. Does that also apply to people that are involved with drugs? And if it is, then why aren't these people being put away? I mean, this is ridiculous. If they're being able to play out, you've got to, it should be similar to what Mr. Trump is saying about the whole thing with the illegals, that there should be a listing, and if you have so many strikes against you, you're in jail. It doesn't matter whether or not you can get out on personal bail or not.
To answer your question, yes, it does apply in certain circumstances. Most of the strikes are violent type crimes like armed robbery. South Carolina lists 2 different categories of those strikes type crimes. They list serious crimes, and that's how they refer to them. Not that they're actually serious, they are, but they call them serious in the statute. And most serious. Why they come up with that word, and I don't know, you have to ask the legislature. I thought that's kind of confusing because to me they're all serious and they're all very, very serious. But serious and most serious. You have to have 2 most serious, and then it's actually, you can be a 2 strike. That would be, for instance, an armed robbery. Maybe somebody did an armed robbery and then they do another one. On that second armed robbery, would be the conviction would be 2 most serious. You could choose to see the 2 strikes you're out. Same thing applies with the 3 strikes too. You can use, there are more serious crimes on the list because they're not quite as most serious. I know this kind of sounds like I'm really trying to word it the best I can because that's actually the way it's written in the law. And but you can have a combination of most serious and serious, then you got to have 3. But there are not a lot of drug cases that are actually on that list. They probably, without looking at it off the top of my head, I can't tell you all of them. Most of them would be like trafficking kind of things and also most drug cases don't fall under that serious or most serious. There are some. And in certain circumstances, we probably might choose to use that. Usually when I've done the 3 strikes cases, and I've done quite a few of them over the years, they've been repeat burglars or repeat armed robbers that have kind of fallen into that category. And I know there's no hope for them and that they're a menace to society, so we choose to serve that notice on them. It's a choice that the prosecutor makes. And once we serve that notice, if they're convicted of that crime, the judge has to give a life sentence. They don't have the discretion to give them less.
Well, it would seem though that this is hand in hand. If someone is doing drugs, a lot of times they have to commit crimes to be able to continue with their habit, and or if they're the ones that are making the drugs, they have to have the money to do it. So what I don't understand is why people who do drugs or sell drugs are in a lesser category than someone who breaks into your home or steals from you or hurts you to get money. To me, they're all entwined in one another.
They are, and most of the people that I put in prison for life for armed robbery or burglary or something like that, assault, battery, intent to kill, most of those are drug addicts, and drugs are the root of their problem. Drugs are the root of the problems, almost all the cases we have. Most of the thefts are drug related. They're addicts and they're looking to steal stuff to sell. So I understand your question. A lot of the drug penalties, unless they're up on a third or subsequent offense, a lot of them, depending on the severity, how much, if it's a trafficking case, how much actual, call it weight of the drugs is there. And the different levels, if the more